Channel, where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome to another episode of Do-It-Yourself Budget Hot Rodding. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Project Lena. Now, Project Lena is our 2003 Pontiac Grand Am GT. And as the filming of this is January 2025. Okay. Project Lena has been around a long time. I know there's some of us older ones in the hot rod community that kind of struggle with that. Well, that's a fairly new car. No, it's not. And time marches on. Okay, time marches on. So what we're going to talk about today is this little guy right here. This is just a simple bypass hose that kind of connects into a kind of a, you really wouldn't think, for those of us who've been around the old cars and things like that, it's like, that's an interesting place to put a hose. I don't even know why you would even need anything like, extra plumbing going from here to there. I mean, that could run, So it just seems a little weird, but that's just how they did it. All right? So now that we can kind of have an understanding of that, let me roll the video footage and show you what we had to do to replace this part, and then at the end of this, we're going to talk about what happened to this little hose. Welcome back. All right, so what was going on with this is, and I know the camera's not going to pick it up, but basically there was a bunch of several little splits here, and it was bulging right here and right here. So this hose was leaking very heavily. Now, granted, it's a bypass hose, but there's a lot of pressure on these coolant systems, and a lot of people don't realize how much pressure's on them. You got to remember, okay, as the car gets warmer, that's steam, it's a lot of heat. These hoses are always under constant temperature changes. That's a lot of pressure in itself. And a lot of people tend to forget, steam moves locomotives. It moves trains, okay? And technically speaking, steam, your nuclear-powered submarines in a way, kind of a roundabout way, that's steam-powered, whether you want to admit it or not. So if you find that interesting, in essence, this, this simple bypass hose was causing severe problems to a coolant system. Now, what's the solution? Obviously, get a replacement part, okay? And getting the replacement part can sometimes be a bit challenging. You guys got to remember, we're talking a car that's over 20 years old, okay? Again, we're back to, Project Lena. 2003. That doesn't sound that old, but yes, it is. Okay, to some of us older ones, it's like, well, that's not that old. Yeah, it is. We need to be real about this. That's 20 years ago. That's over 20 years ago when something like this would have been brand new. Okay, now that now being said, usually about every 7 years, give or take, of just day-to-day driving, these rubber hoses wear out, and you'll get the bulging and the splitting, and then sometimes, in some cases, you'll see them on the highway where they weren't keeping a close eye on this stuff, and all of a sudden, you'll see someone on the side of the road, and just all the steam and everything rolling everywhere. That's because they didn't watch close enough at those lines, and it burst, which, to be fair, I could have been watching this one a little bit closer myself, okay? So get the replacement molded line, you remove the clamps like you've seen me do in the video, and you reinstall it just as you took it off, put on new hose clamps. But a moment on, there are aftermarket versions of these where you can get them in silicone, and stuff like that, and silicone does hold up better, but it costs more, okay? I know there's some where you can kind of cut your own silicone lines and stuff, and that's fine. A lot of the police cars, police cruisers use silicone coolant lines, but again, more expensive, rubber cheaper. This is DIY budget hot rodding, okay? So we're just going to replace it, all right? And looking at these old clips, okay, I'm not a huge fan of these, okay? Especially when you get into bigger ones, like these. Basically, they're a squeeze clamp. You put some channel locks or some big pliers on them, and you squeeze the pliers, and it squeezes these open. And if they get turned one way or the other, good luck getting a set of pliers in. Now, what I like instead of that is I like the old school hose clamps like this. Where you got the, you can use a Phillips or a flathead screwdriver in this end and turn it one way or the other, will tighten or loosen it, okay? But in a lot of cases, even if that, even if you strip the head off of it and having difficulty getting it off, you can easily put a socket on some of these because it's actually cut for a socket. To go on there, and you can still ratchet it off. So it gives you a couple of options there. Now, these do hold up a little bit longer than these, but these are oftentimes a little bit cheaper. They stay nicer looking longer than something like this, and if positioned properly, is still easier to take loose and tighten than these, okay? So I like these a little bit more, but again, it's your project, you do you. So if that helps you any, okay? So this is just a simple repair that will save your engine in the long run. When you got a coolant leak, And unfortunately, when you get into cars, 1996 and newer, it can be challenging to track down, where the leak is on a coolant system. Just stay with it, and eventually you will find it. And when you find it, fix it immediately. And most importantly, make sure that you're putting the proper coolant back into your project car. And what do I mean by that? Being a 2003, Project Lena requires Dexcool or a universal coolant that works with Dexcool. Okay? If this would have been, we'll say 10 years before, somewhere like 5 to 10 years before Project Lena, we would have still been using the green stuff. Okay? And that went into everything. Now, really quick, I want to talk about that very quickly. I know there's some shops out there that will put, when they do radiator work and they've got to replace the coolant, they just automatically, with the GMs, throw the green stuff back in. And they'll do a good job with it, where it'll run fine, but the problem is it runs 5 to 10 degrees hotter than what it does. Now, this doesn't sound like a big issue, but it can be, all right? So, and let me explain. With Dexcool and certain companies, they will, they'll make sure that their engine with their factory coolant runs right around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Not a super big deal. It's not super hot. I prefer my engines to run at about 180, but they did this as a way to try to burn the fuel a little bit better. I doubt it really actually helps more as much as they think, but whatever, okay? So they wanted to run at about 200 degrees. So, and that's with their factory stuff. Well, with the green stuff, they find that a lot of them run 5 to 10 degrees hotter. Well, if you're having coolant issues like this, and you're running the green stuff, and it's already 5 to, that's a little bit, that's a little less time you have to get your vehicle to a safe place and stop it before your temperature reaches a detrimental state. And the other thing of it is that temperature is bad for the internals of your engine, okay? Temperature is really bad for it. So if the factory calls for 200 degrees, unless you've done a reflash and completely built your engine to run at a cooler temperature, that's what the factory wants you to run it at, okay? Now, all that being said, I know some of you, will say, well, I'm running the green stuff in my newer GM. It's not giving me any problems. Not yet, okay? So just bear that in mind, okay? I'm not saying that what you're doing is necessarily wrong, but I'm not saying it's right, okay? Give yourself some window in case something happens to your baby, and run what the factory calls for. And the other thing of it is that prolonged, increase in temperature will shorten the lifespan of your engine. So just keep that in mind, okay? And if you want to do it anyways, it's on you, okay? End of lecture. All right, so that does bring us to a good stopping point for this particular video. If you enjoy content just like what we're talking about right here, get on over to Teespring and purchase yourself some Prince Magnum channel merchandise. We've done our very best to provide you guys with a good merchandise store. We haven't added a whole lot in a while, mainly because, until product starts really moving, there's no sense in sinking, I guess you could say, R&D time into more of the, more products, more, I guess you could say, more stuff for you guys to buy. We just, there's no sense in jumping ahead of this, let's see what starts moving, and then we can kind of build on that. And then, of course, as always, all the proceeds from Teespring go right back into the project cars. And bear in mind, when you guys are buying stuff, I'm able to do more and provide you guys with more content. Also, over on Patreon, $1 a month grants you access to Cinnamon's Discord. Just did a live stream yesterday, a collab stream with my dear friend my brother from another mother, Spirit Wolf of Spirit Wolf Gaming, and someone was talking about that, 18 plus for Cinnamon's Discord and $1 a month. I said, I don't ask for much because I know everybody's broke, okay? Our economy tanked in the last 4 years, so, no one has money, all right? So I get it. We made it as cheap as possible while still trying to fund the channel. I think that's a pretty fair deal, okay? And what do you get on Cinnamon's Discord? You see me writing. Me writing articles. Of course, you can share, adult-minded content. There's a lot more free reign in that particular area. So with that, supporting an idea like that for a community that likes to maybe say some stuff that's kind of risque and finds a little, likes to be tongue-in-cheek when the bedroom door closes. To me, $1 a month isn't too much to ask when it's helping the channel with content. All right. So we kind of covered that. So as I get ready to add this to the stockpile of parts that we have replaced on 2 vehicles, I get to remind you guys, get out there and work on a project. Don't care what it is, just do something with yourselves. Remember, idle hands and a creative mind go together like oil and water. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet and do something special for them today. And as always, for every last one of you out there, if no one out there has told you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.
You hear me? Wrong. This is wrong, man. Wrong, man. Wrong. My brains are.